Every single morning, millions of dog owners do the same thing. They grab their keys, they look down at their dog, and they feel it, that pull. The eyes, the stillness, the way the dog tracks every movement like they already know what is coming. And so the owner does what any loving person would do. They crouch down. They say goodbye. They tell the dog they will be back soon. They give them one more scratch behind the ears, then another, then one more because the dog looks so worried and leaving feels so cruel. They walk out the door believing they just made it easier. They made it harder. Not because they are bad owners. Because everything their instinct tells them to do in that moment is the exact opposite of what their dog's nervous system actually needs. And because this goodbye happens every single weekday, sometimes twice, the pattern compounds. The anxiety does not stay the same. It grows. Week by week, the dog's response to your departure ritual gets bigger, more intense, harder to come down from. And most owners never connect the dots between what they do at the door and what their dog does for the 2 hours after it closes. By the time this video ends, you will understand exactly what is happening inside your dog's brain during your morning departure, why the goodbye you perform every day is functioning as a rehearsal for panic rather than a comfort, and the precise system that changes the entire shape of how your dog experiences you leaving. Welcome to PAW'S Mind. If you are new here, subscribe right now because this channel goes past the surface behavior into the neurological and psychological mechanics of what your dog is actually experiencing so that what you do every day works with their brain instead of against it. Before anything else, there is one thing you must understand. Your dog does not experience your departure as a single event. They experience it as a sequence. And that sequence begins long before you open the front door. Dogs are extraordinary readers of human routine. Research published in Animal Cognition found that dogs not only recognize departure cues, but begin responding to them up to 30 minutes before the owner actually leaves. Your alarm, the sound of the shower, the smell of coffee, the particular way you move through the kitchen on a work morning versus a weekend morning. Your dog has cataloged all of it. And by the time you pick up your keys, their cortisol is already elevated. The anxiety does not start at the door. It starts at the alarm. This is why the goodbye ritual causes so much damage. By the time it happens, your dog is already in an elevated neurological state. And then you crouch down and mirror that elevation back to them. High-pitched voice, prolonged eye contact, extended physical contact, an emotional quality to your touch that signals this is significant. Your dog does not understand your words, but they read your body, your voice, your energy, with extraordinary precision. And what they read in a prolonged emotional goodbye is confirmation that what is about to happen is something worth being distressed about. You are not comforting them. You are validating the threat. Step-by-step system. There are 4 components to this system. They build on each other. Follow them in order. Component 1. Dismantle the pre-departure ritual. The single most powerful thing you can do costs nothing and requires no training. Stop making your departure a ritual. Right now, your morning has a shape your dog has memorized. Every action in that sequence signals what is coming. The shower, the particular outfit, the briefcase or bag by the door, the keys picked up at the same time in the same way every morning. Each of these individually raises your dog's arousal. Together, they build a cortisol wave that crests precisely when you say goodbye. The dismantling process works like this. You begin performing your departure cues at random times when you are not leaving. Pick up your keys and sit back down. Put on your coat and watch television for 10 minutes. Pick up your bag, walk to the door, and then walk to the kitchen instead. Do this repeatedly across multiple days with no pattern. What you are doing is called cue desensitization. Research published in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior found that dogs whose owners systematically desensitized departure cues showed significantly reduced pre-departure anxiety compared to dogs in control groups, with measurable differences in cortisol response within 2 weeks of consistent practice. The keys stop predicting the departure. The coat stops predicting the departure. The bag stops predicting the departure. When those cues lose their predictive value, the cortisol wave does not build the same way. You walk out the door and your dog's nervous system does not have 20 minutes of escalating preparation behind it. This step alone will not solve the problem. But without it, nothing else you do will reach its full effect. The wave has to be smaller before you can work with it. Component 2, replace the goodbye with nothing. This is the component that feels the most wrong and produces the most change. From this point forward, there is no goodbye. Not a reduced goodbye. Not a calmer goodbye. No goodbye. You do not crouch down. You do not say their name in a soft voice. You do not make eye contact on your way to the door. You do not give one last touch. You walk out, not coldly, not with any particular energy in either direction. The way you would walk from the living room to the bathroom. Neutral, unremarkable, a thing that happens and then is over. Here is the neurological reason this matters. When you perform an emotional goodbye, you create a marked event. The dog's brain encodes marked events differently from unmarked ones. A prolonged, emotional, physically intense departure signals to the brain. This moment is significant, pay attention. This is the kind of event that warrants a strong response. You are essentially telling your dog's nervous system to remember this moment and feel something about it. When you leave without ceremony, the event has no mark. It is a door that opened and closed. It carries no information about whether your absence will be short or long, safe or unsafe. And a nervous system with no information to react to is a nervous system that has to wait and see rather than immediately catastrophize. The first few days of this will feel cruel. Your dog will still respond to the departure because the pattern is already established. But you are starting to unwrite it. Every unmarked departure is one data point against a history of marked ones. The data accumulates. The response begins to diminish. Component 3, build a pre-departure anchor. Removing the goodbye creates a vacuum. The dog's nervous system has been organized around that ritual. When you remove it without replacing it, some dogs escalate briefly before settling. What you place in that vacuum is not comfort. It is occupation. 15 minutes before you leave, not at the door, not as you are putting on your coat. 15 minutes before, you give your dog a high-value frozen food toy in their designated space. A frozen Kong, a lick mat with something spread on it, a food puzzle that takes sustained engagement to work through. Something that requires active, physical, repetitive engagement. The timing is deliberate. You are giving the frozen toy before the anxiety peaks, not after. A dog already in the anxiety state will not engage with food. Their threat detection system has priority over their appetite. You have to get the toy in before the wave builds. What the toy does is dual. The physical act of licking and chewing releases endorphins and reduces cortisol. And the cognitive engagement of working through a food puzzle occupies the prefrontal processing that would otherwise be directed toward tracking your departure cues. The dog's brain is busy. It cannot simultaneously be monitoring you and solving the food puzzle at maximum capacity. Research on canine stress response confirms that food-based enrichment delivered proactively, before the stressor rather than during it, produces measurably greater reductions in anxiety indicators than the same enrichment delivered reactively. Timing is everything. You give the toy. You leave. The dog is working on the toy when the door closes. That is the association you are building. You leaving means the best thing in the day arrives. Component 4. Structure the return to match the departure. Most owners fix the departure and ignore the return. This is the equivalent of treating one side of a wound. The departure and the return are two halves of the same neurological event in your dog's brain. If you come home and the reunion is enormous, if you walk in and immediately drop to the floor and celebrate and mirror your dog's excitement back at them in a flood of voice and touch, you are completing a cycle that keeps the departure significant. A massive reunion tells your dog's brain, retroactively, that the absence was an event worth all the distress that preceded it. The bigger the return, the more justified the anxiety about the departure feels. The return protocol mirrors the departure protocol. You walk in. You do not announce yourself. You do not make eye contact immediately. You put down your things, take off your coat, move through a normal sequence of actions for 2 to 3 minutes. Then, when your dog has begun to settle from the initial surge of arousal, you greet them, calmly, at their level with contact on the chest. A few slow, quiet strokes. Then you go about your evening. What you are teaching over weeks of this is that the shape of your absence is predictable. You leave quietly. You return quietly. The departure and the return are both unremarkable. and an absence between two unremarkable events is an absence that does not need to be feared. The most common reason this system fails is inconsistency across days. You do it correctly 4 mornings in a row, then on Friday you are running late, you are stressed, you grab your keys and rush out, and you look back at your dog in the doorway. That one marked departure undoes 3 days of progress. Not permanently, but significantly. Every emotional departure reloads the neural association you are trying to dismantle. The second failure point is the partner or housemate who has not been briefed. If one person in the household is performing the full emotional goodbye ritual every morning while another is following the system, the dog receives contradictory information. Anxiety does not resolve with mixed data. Everyone who leaves that house needs to follow the same departure protocol. The third failure point is expecting linear progress. You will have good weeks and regression weeks. Regression is not failure. It is a nervous system that encountered something it did not have enough data to handle yet. Go back to shorter departures, more pre-departure cue desensitization, and proactive frozen toys. The foundation does not disappear. It just needs reinforcement. You will know this system is working when the shape of your mornings changes. When you pick up your keys and your dog does not immediately go to the door. When you put on your coat and they stay on their bed. When you leave and they are already working on the frozen toy rather than watching the door. The deeper sign is what happens when you return. A dog who has genuinely resolved departure anxiety does not greet you from a place of relief. They greet you from a place of pleasure. There is a difference in the body. Relief looks like a nervous system unwinding. Pleasure looks like a nervous system that was fine and is now even better. That dog exists on the other side of this system. Not a dog who has been trained to suppress their distress or endure the absence. A dog whose nervous system has accumulated enough evidence that your leaving is safe, temporary, and followed without fail by your return. Most owners have a dog who dreads the morning. The difference between that dog and the dog who watches you leave without panic is not the dog's temperament or their history. It is what happens in the 2 minutes before and after the door closes, performed the same way every single day, until the nervous system has no more reason to be afraid. If this changed the way you understand what your departure is actually doing to your dog every morning, share this with someone whose dog watches them leave. Because most of them think the guilt they feel at the door is the problem. Now you know the guilt is the symptom, and what you do about it is the solution. Subscribe to PAW'S Mind. Every week, we go this deep into what your dog is actually experiencing so that everything you do builds the relationship instead of quietly working against it. And if your dog is fine when you leave but comes apart the moment you are gone for more than an hour, there is a reason that pattern looks different from standard separation anxiety and most owners never identify it. That video is next.